to Seattle Voices. I'm delighted to have as my guest today Adora Svitak, who is, well, first of all, our youngest guest ever, and one of our most accomplished. Author, educator, conference curator, and organizer. Adora, we met at TEDx Rainier back in October 2010, one of the TEDx events, which we'll talk more about. But when you are in settings like this, how do you introduce yourself? What do you say you are besides 13?
Well, definitely, when somebody asks me, what do you say at these conferences, I do say, well, it is a lot of explaining, because many people do wonder what is a 13-year-old girl doing walking around at TED or at TEDx Rainier or whichever conference it is. So often I'll introduce myself. I'll say, hi, my name's Adora Svitak. And if people want to know what I'm doing at the conference, then I might explain either I'm speaking or I'm attending because I'm a TEDx organizer or I've published a couple of books. But usually I don't do the whole big, here's who I am, here's what I do in one sentence.
So let's start with each of these pieces. So TEDx, to those who do not know, there's a thing called the TED Conference, right, in California, Technology, Entertainment, Design, right, which has spawned now lots of baby TED conferences, right, in different locations. So you helped organize a youth-driven TEDx conference in 2010. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure, well, TEDx Redmond, I was extremely proud because we managed to execute a conference that was entirely organized by fellow youth. We had this committee that we managed to pull together even over summer vacation and the beginning of the school year. And we were very driven about motivating all of our audiences to come, and our audience was mainly students, and then our speakers were all under 18. So being able to pull all these kids together from all corners of the U.S. was, I think, a pretty amazing thing when I look back on it.
Why'd you do it?
Because I saw that there was a lack of conferences that I could go to and not have to explain myself. It was a lot of maybe even slightly selfish reasons that I would go to a lot of these conferences and see, well, it's a bunch of adults and talking about things that are relevant to kids. Why can't we have a conference where it's kids really driving this discussion as well?
And so as you organize this group of young people, what kinds of things did you were you surprised anyway by what you and your fellow young people decided you wanted to talk about? Was it different from what you'd expected?
Yeah, because myself, I find that even young people can underestimate our peers, sometimes even more than adults can, because we've internalized all of this well. We just like to chat or talk about clothes and that sort of thing. So I thought originally that it would be difficult finding enough speakers who had founded charities or climbed mountains and all this, but I was amazed by the number we had. We actually had 18 speakers, and we wanted so many more as well. So I think that was what I learned most. I combine that with obviously my own learning through going to these conferences, as well as I can take electives at my local school too.
So what's a day, or if a day is too hard, a week in the life, the learning life of Adora? What's your rhythm of how you do your online courses, your other kind of learning and so forth?
Well, it really starts probably, I do a lot of schoolwork in the morning, but I also do it at nighttime, so it's kind of when I wake up and when I go to bed. Between those times, I would log into my online school and do the assignments, turn in homework, but at the same time, when I'm on trips, obviously it's a little harder to do that, so I might be going to museums. Recently I was in Switzerland at a conference for television broadcasters, and so I was going to the history museums and learning about Lucerne and Geneva and all these wonderful places. And then at the same time, reading in my history textbook about Europe and about America. And so it's nice to be able to travel and to be speaking French while learning French online as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you, are there parts of traditional school that you miss or wish you could, have, whether it's certain activities or social structure, or whatever it may be?
Well, I always tell my parents, because my mom is all into being healthy and exercising. I was like, you should have gotten us involved in team sports or something. I'm not actually a super big fan of that, but sure, there's some aspects of school that it's definitely a lot easier to do certain projects in large groups and have that social atmosphere. But I don't think I miss there's a lot of, I wouldn't quite say politics, but there's a lot of drama that goes on. My sister goes to regular school for most of her courses, and she went to the prom this weekend, and I was like, I'm not really into all that. I actually, our life is very, when she went to the prom, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post criticizing it, so I would say that sort of represents how I feel about going to a traditional school.
What, I guess you've developed long ago ways of relating to adults who might underestimate you or think it's cute, what you do or whatever. Do you find that, have you developed, would you say, a persona in addition to who you are? Do you know what I mean? Like a way of being in the world so that you can just kind of deal with the idiot adults who are coming and just expecting X, Y, or Z of you, and what's that like? Because you live a remarkably external public life for someone who's 13 and not, a pop star celebrity.
Well, that's the nice thing is that I guess it's double sided because I'm not a pop star celebrity. I'm not getting photographed on the street or people asking for autographs. But at the same time, it doesn't give me I can't go to some company and say, hey, I don't have the name recognition that would earn me a lot of things if I were a celebrity and give me stuff, which is okay. I have to work in order to earn stuff. But as far as the persona, well, when I hear that, I kind of think of a rapper kind of changing one's name a lot, and I don't really have to have a persona. I think I just show who I am, or at least some semblance of the things that won't make people not like me. I don't show the not getting up early in the morning parts. I think that I try to present my best face to the world, but I think that's what everybody does, and I really try to be a role model to others, but I'm not covering anything up.
Who? Obviously your parents have had a hugely influential role in your life. As you look over these years of just doing all this remarkable stuff, have there been other figures who've been significant mentors and guides to you?
Well, yeah, definitely my parents were my very first teachers. Being homeschooled, that has really literal significance. But I would say definitely I've had mentors over the years. My work has been edited by many family friends and editors, and I've had some amazing tutors because the way that we were homeschooled, it wasn't just my parents teaching us. My mom would get a lot of university students to come teach us about art history and writing, and so I had a really great education in that kind of varied amount of subjects. And so those were, I've always had great support from my teachers, both within academics and outside of school. And I think that by going to these conferences and hearing speakers, this has been a great impact on me, contributing to my education. As far as conference curators, I've learned a lot from Chris Anderson, from Nasima Sefi, who did TEDx Junior, as you know, great inspirations for curating events. So I really try to take in everybody's inspiration and teaching.
You mentioned Nasima Sefi, who a novelist, physician, who curated the TEDx Rainier event. And Nassim actually is an interesting person to bring up because she talks a lot about how she was, as a learner and a mover in the world, a prodigy as well. I think she went to university at your age, I think 13 or 14. And she's reflected now, in later years on how, on the one hand, that was incredible to get the blossoming of exposure to the world and a sense of agency, that you can do stuff and make stuff happen, right? And on the other hand, she's realized in later years that there was just, predictably, I suppose, inevitably, just a lag time of catch-up of the social-emotional learning of life that comes with just being situated among your peer group. And I'm wondering for you whether, you're in teenage land now, you're 13. Are you aware of this? Is it how are you sensing that kind of shift? Is there a lag or a separation there for you?
Well, compared to Nassim, I feel like a slacker not going to college yet. I am only in 9th grade, which is 2 grades ahead. For me, I think it has a lot to do with, for instance, I was taking cooking and drama at my local school, Barton Junior High, and going there and sitting with my classmates who are the same age, what ended up happening was I would just talk about different things than I would be talking about, say, at a conference with a lot of other adults or at TEDx Redmond with super motivated young people. But I think that what happens is I don't look down on others because, hey, you're not watching the news every day, or you're not, keeping track of what's happening in the community. I think that you just have to look at everybody for, as far as finding value, even in talking about silly bands or something, and learning from that. So definitely, it is valuable to be talking with my peers, and you can learn a lot from your peers. And that's why I started TEDx Redmond, was to find other young people who are interested in the same topics, who want to make change, to motivate my fellow 7th, 8th, 9th graders to do the same thing. So I think it is important to keep in touch with your peers, but also not having an ageist view of society. Not saying because I am 13, I should look at the world in this way.
Mm-hmm. What, now that you're 13 and you said you're ninth grade, so you're in high school, right? What are you, when you project ahead to 3-4 years from now, like what are you excited about, and what, if anything, are you scared or anxious about?
Well, I'm super excited, obviously, about figuring out the university. Everybody's asking me what school you're going to go to, and I haven't decided yet, or really started thinking about it too much. Probably will. So that's really exciting. But for me, definitely these conferences, organizing TEDx Stradman is a huge deal this year. I'm also really interested in getting involved with television, perhaps starting a show of some kind, getting young people to be more involved in making change, writing another book. So those are just a couple of projects that I have on the burner trying to arrange. And obviously continuing with my studies and keeping on top of everything, hopefully.
When you talk about the various projects on your burner, when do you feel like you learn kind of these meta skills of how to manage your life and how to keep different things on different burners and so on and so forth, right? Because it's one thing to do any one of these things at your age, but it's another thing altogether to be able to pull back and keep things in flow and manage and keep things in balance. Do you have a sense of when and where you learned that?
I'm still learning it because I find myself procrastinating on things, and it makes itself most evident when I'm doing schoolwork and I'm catching up on a couple of science lessons, but also I'm maybe putting off writing an email to that sponsor, or I'm still learning it. And I think that's one of the greatest things though, is that it's taught me you always keep on learning. You don't ever stop and say, okay, I've mastered this skill, now I'm going to just completely stop learning about it. I've been able to figure out my time management and the workflow to some extent, but it's still a work in progress, and that's actually a really valuable thing.
How much of your motivation comes from inside and how much of it comes from outside?
Well, it is nice to be able to travel to Switzerland and Dubai and all these different places, and that is definitely a great added bonus, but I think I would be going to, even if there was a city that didn't really appeal to me, that if it was a valuable audience and it was a conference or my message could really have an impact, I would go. Because a lot of times I'm going to places that I maybe not going for sightseeing, but I know that the audience will be teachers that will be taking this message back to their schools, so the impact really is more the motivation for me. And I'm not sure if that's an intrinsic thing or it's outside, but I guess it's a little bit of both.
So do you feel like, this is a hard thought experiment, but say your parents or mentors and guides like Nassim, Steffi, or people who've been models to you in the past, were all to go away for a year, right, on some trip. Do you feel like you would still just be charging ahead doing all that you're doing here, or do you feel like if there weren't others kind of encouraging you or nudging you or holding up examples of what you could do, that you might want to chill out for a while?
Go away for a year. I'm wondering what this hypothetical trip where this is taking. I won't press you on can I call them? Can I schedule them? I think I would still want to keep on doing the things that I was doing because I get, for one thing, there's a little bit of extrinsic. I get a lot of enjoyment from it, and I get a lot of fulfillment from seeing emails. It's like, you inspired me to keep on reading these amazing books and not to worry about what my friends say about how I'm doing this or whatever. But I think I would do it for that, and for the fact that if they all went away for a year, I would be pretty bored if I didn't keep myself doing some kind of work.
Mm-hmm. I want to return to the second part of my earlier question, which is what, if anything, are you anxious or scared about in the coming years?
That's right. Anxious or scared about. Definitely all my mentors going on a year-long trip would not be...
That would be scary.
That would be not appealing. I think, seriously, I think people trying to... Because a lot of people introduce me as, this 13-year-old speaker. She's only 13. And I understand that because my age is a big part of because I am speaking about, youth empowerment and these issues that are relevant to my age. But I don't want people to keep on introducing me as the 14-year-old, the 15-year-old, the 16-year-old, because I think that really loses its appeal. Mm-hmm. And to have something that's more long-lasting. Mm-hmm. And I'm just hoping that when I speak, it's not going to be, she's pretty good for a 16-year-old, because that doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense of, you said a couple of times now when you're out there and delivering your message, What's your message? What are you? What if you could crystallize it? What's your message?
Well, there's a few core causes, I guess, that I have. One of them, obviously, literacy and loving learning. This is what I talk about a lot of times. I do everyday video conferences with schools, and I talk to students about personal narrative, about writing, trying to make it really understandable and not just something that you do for school or for assignments. So that's one of my big things, and that's something that I pursue pretty much every day. Another one is my activism. So I work with the World Food Program as a youth representative. And again, I make world hunger something that's not this abstract idea, but I get kids to see how they can make change with some initiatives. And then another big part that I'm doing through TEDx Redmond and with my TED speech and speeches at many of the general interest conferences is education and youth empowerment and youth voice. So those are my main messages.
What kinds of things do you do purely for? I mean, it may be all these things, right? That you just described, purely for enjoyment. Would you? Is it this?
Not quite. I mean, I do. Well, obviously this is fun, but I wouldn't say this is what I do if I'm bored on a Saturday morning. If it's Saturday night, I might watch TV. But that's obviously as far as like regular things. I do play video games and watch TV and go outside and enjoy farmers markets and biking and all those sorts of things. I'm not a big sports person, unfortunately, which I blame on my parents again, not signing up for basketball or something. But I do a lot of things other than reading and writing. But I don't have like a hard work-life separation, which I think school does a lot. You have your academics and then you have life, and you have to have a life. I think that it really, it's a whole life, I guess.
Do you think that itself is a model that you would like to help spread? The idea of, I mean, it's not necessarily literally homeschooling and online learning, but just the idea of breaking down that school and life barrier?
I think it is a good thing to do because my sister is always saying, oh, you need to have a life and go and party more. Okay, she doesn't actually say that much. But when we look at how school works, it's you go to school for X number of hours, and then once you get out, then you go places and you have fun. But why do we have to have such a separation? Why can't we have fun within school through projects and feel like we're having an impact and not have such a separation between this is what I enjoy and oh, this is school?
So if you were, and given your trajectory, it's wholly in the realm of possibility, if you were queen of all education, public education here, how would you reinvent school to make it more meaningful in the ways that you're describing?
Well, something that a lot of people talk about is project-based learning. I am a big believer in project-based learning and solving problems, but I think it needs to be taken with a grain of salt because there are certain things that, yeah, you do just have to learn. And you don't
like basic facts.
Yeah, basic facts. And another thing is that a lot of my favorite things are really like art history and archaeology. These are things which are not very useful in as far as like solving global warming, but they are interesting topics. So having a variety, having kids be exposed to a real diversity of subjects gives you an appreciation of the world and another lens of seeing the world that I think is valuable. So more diversity of subjects, which I think it's going in the wrong direction with cutting it down to just reading and math essentially with testing. And then I think also less age separation. We have a very rigid grade system that's you're 6 or you're 7, you're in first grade, second grade, on and on. And this is something that's kept me from advancing a lot of times because I've had to argue, can you let me take the 12th grade course or the 11th grade course and AP courses? And so not restricting people based on their age and making learning really more open. In order to enroll in a school that you have to fill out a lot of forms, you have to do all this paperwork, you can take only this many classes. And so having less of these, I guess, having it less be about money, which is what I've seen from working with districts and education technology companies. It's all a lot of adults trying to get a slice of this pie. So youth voice, less separation by age, more diversity of subjects, and yeah, I think that those are a few things I would want to do, and also starting later in the morning.
So a lot of, most likely a lot of the viewers initially of this conversation will be adults rather than kids. They'll be parents more likely than the children. Given your life experience, what advice or observations would you offer to the parents out there about, incomparable to what you just described about reinventing school, to rethinking how we parent?
Have your kids watch Seattle Voices? No, actually, but that's one of the things that my parents did. They let us we were watching PBS and we were watching King County TV, and my dad is always turning it on to these weird channels up in the 20-somethings that are, public stations. And I think that is a really valuable part of my childhood, that I got the chance not just to see, well, we didn't really see a whole lot of the really commercial cartoons because my parents were like, hey, there's something better on, you can watch Masterpiece Theater or something. And so that was really valuable to me, having, because my parents would say, this is kid stuff and this is adult stuff. I mean, well, with some things, but they would let us be in on conversations and participate in conversations with adults. And I think, again, in the same way that I went to be in med school, to not be separated so much by age, but instead really being able to learn from those younger and older than me.
What's your take? I imagine you've been asked this a lot since the whole cultural controversy about Tiger Mother came out, right? And Tiger Moms and Amy Chua and her whole story of, slightly, I think, over-dramatized about how she was so hardcore with her kids and now they're, at Harvard and so forth. What's your take on that whole phenomenon?
Well, my mom actually called into the radio when Amy Chua was on the air and braided her about how she had 2 awesome kids and she didn't do any of that, which I thought was pretty funny. Well, actually, with the Amy Chua thing, when I read the thing that came out on the Wall Street Journal, and afterwards, I know it was excerpted from the beginning, and I read the book, and I think that they made a mistake in excerpting from that particular part. But I think that we live in a society that's in order to get attention on that scale, you have to be so fiery and you have to be so extreme, and I think that it shouldn't be going in that direction. But at the same time, obviously, I think that there are some things that can be learned, but mostly I disagree with her approach, because with my own parents, it was very much we'll buy you lots of books, but we're not going to sit here with a gun to your head making you read it. It was very much this whole intrinsic love of learning, not do your multiplication because I'm going to beat you up if you don't. Mm-hmm. So I think that's very important, not to be motivated by fear, but instead because you want to do it. And so I think it's up to adults to expose kids to a wide variety of subjects and books, because when I was little, I really hated math. I didn't want to do my multiplication, but my parents showed me, this is what it's used for, this is why it's important, and really reasoned with me like an adult instead of saying, you better do this job or yourself. Yeah.
Just so I can pick up the tip, what did they actually say? This is what it's useful for, and here's why you should do it.
A lot of, actually, my parents, when I was learning percents, it was very big on, hey, look at this, can you figure out this? If I wanted to buy clothes, it would be, okay, it's 40% off, you figure it out, which actually I still some issues with to this day, but it was a lot of reasoning. With multiplication, it was, there was a little bit of, okay, I wanted to make my parents proud that I could figure it out, but it was mostly because I realized if I want to get further, if I want to be as smart as my sister, if I want to be able to do other kinds of math, which I did, this is a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm. What do you feel like, what do you sense right now that you don't know enough of and want to know? And it can be academic subject matter, it can be life skills, I don't care what, but just like what is on the edge of your consciousness of, I feel like I should really get more exposed to X?
Probably, math, science, I've never been that great at. And then technology, I can't program for my life or do HTML or any of that. I joke that my HTML is essentially read, copy, and paste what I think does something. So I would like to be more aware of technology. I'm right now, because my mom is sort of an early adopter, and as a result, I was just, no, I'm not into this whole craze about iPads, iPhones, whatever new iDevice. But I think that I need to be more being able to see the, programming side and all that, because it definitely has implications for our future. So that, and then also, I don't always have such great business sense, as far as thinking about here's the demographic or here's the revenue, that sort of thing. So all those things, I could probably work on.
Well, Adora, it's just, it's really exciting to talk with you and to hear about all the things that you've done already and have planned, and thanks for setting the example that you're setting.
Oh, thank you so much.
My guest today has been Adora Svitak, and you've been watching Seattle Voices. I'm Eric Liu. Thanks for joining us, and please tune in again.
God damn it. So close. I screwed up the ending too.